Everybody. It is holiday season. I am super excited for a really important webinar, data. I got to provide some context. I got to do some housekeeping, but first let me introduce myself. My name is Garrett Sussman. I am the Director of Marketing at iPullRank. We are going to go through this local visibility in AI search. You're in for a treat. If you haven't been paying attention, a few months ago, Christian, who I will introduce in a moment as well, will walk us through all the data he's been sifting through and analyzing at Yext. He's going to kind of give us a peek under the hood. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we really get into the nuts and bolts of all of this is recorded. So don't worry, you'll be able to watch the replay, share it with all of your team, share it across your organization with everyone who wants, because we want as many people to see this as possible. I will actually send this via email when this is over, so you'll be able to check it out. We will also be sharing the deck with all of the really great visualizations and data analysis and insights that Christian is providing. Please don't hesitate to leave any sort of comments or questions in the chat. Assuming that there is time at the end of this hour, we will take Q&A. But even if we don't have time, I will follow up with Christian and we'll be able to, send out any additional, answers to questions that you might have. Real quick, it seems like everybody is in the chat. I see Guy, I see Tanya, I see Steve. A lot of great people. Where's everybody coming from? Oh, we got Australia represent, Indianapolis, Romania. Amazing. Christian, what's going on in your world, man?
Oh, it's busy. It's crazy. Heading into the holidays, I think I told you, this is maybe week 12 of being on the road out of maybe 14. So I'm really looking forward to this slowing down a little, my friend.
Oh my goodness. And it's fun. So like a little context too, like Christian and we always chat and we're always kind of speculating and discussing everything that's going on in AI search, obviously in a local context, but in the bigger, search ecosystem context. And so I highly recommend, if you don't already follow Christian on LinkedIn, follow him. He writes, weekly blogs where he's kind of explaining and expanding his thoughts and theories on what's going on. And it's such good material. So Christian, should we dive into it? You are in control of the deck. Let's rock and roll.
Absolutely. And thank you again for the opportunity. I love speaking with you and Mike, but also just in general, this whole community is so outstanding. And so we've got both of our logos here. I think we can blow past that. Why don't you get started with your context?
Yeah, real quick. So I think context is really important in AI search. Everything, we all see these personalized experiences whenever we're searching on AI mode or ChatGPT. So now whenever I do a webinar, I want to give some more context about me. So my name's Garrett. I live in Virginia, from Jersey originally, lived in California and Louisiana. I've got a beautiful wife and daughter and a mini golden doodle named Lucy. I'm a Philadelphia sports fan, and I love reading all about psychology, thinking fast and slow, influence, and amazing graphic novels like Day Tripper. Over to you, Christian.
I am also Jersey Strong originally, so we share that in common. I am a father of 3. I live in Florida. This photo is a little older. We actually retried to do this piggyback thing this year, and let me tell you, I almost died. So, but yes, I've been in structured data since I was 23. So I've sort of been building out in structured systems for my whole career. And I've been at Yext, I cannot believe for how long at this point. But my role at Yext is I really focus with our clients about their data and how they use their data in order to show up more. Originally, it was always in search, but now it's really in AI visibility and search combined. Because as Garrett and I tend to agree, I don't think we're really going to be talking about search and AI search very much longer. I think it's all going to come together. And when that happens, we did that at the same time. Once it all gets there, I think we're really going to see changes in how we as marketers, and all of you as either agencies or clients or marketers yourselves, we're going to have to rethink all of our KPIs and how we sort of come to value here. And so I'm going to jump through a bunch of slides. Garrett's going to interrupt me vociferously. And in the process, I mostly want to sort of tell you, where do we see this currently as Yext? We're obviously probably one of the largest brand visibility companies, but at the heart, really what we have been doing for a very long time is just trying to get the data right in as many places as possible. And we do that because there's a lot of proof statistically around, hey, if you get your structured data right, whether it's on your website or on these directories or Google Business Profile, all of these things work together. And I don't do SEO. I don't claim to do SEO. I live in that weird space where if you do the data right, the SEO really they work well together. And so a lot of this research that we're going to talk about today is about that and around that. And I'll start with this slide. I think it's kind of funny to me because I think we made this slide, or I made this slide maybe 2.5 years ago. This is kind of funny to me. Like, this is like a foregone accepted thing now, like that it's fragmenting, like for the longest time. And I still see a lot of arguments online where people are like, oh, well, all the search, the number of searches are still in Google. That's where it's all at. I'm like, you're measuring, that's like measuring a baseball player by the number of swings at bat. Right? Like, that's not how you measure search. Search has to be around the time you spend on the platform, because that's where the money is made, and it's got to be measured on the outcomes. And I think a lot of people are realizing these AI outcomes are getting better and better. They're not there yet, but they're much better. And we're also seeing, we're going to see returns from Black Friday and some of the holiday shopping. I think this year you'll see the first impact.
And what's interesting to me too is just like this being a 2-year-old slide. I mean, it's missing what you would now assume, like Reddit and TikTok. Like, search has even expanded in a lot of ways, and obviously those are integrating AI as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, which is, so I don't know if this might have been on one of your posts, but like, my kids don't Google things anymore. And they're 19, 17, and 11. So they don't use it as a verb. They search it up or search. And I remember when Mike first talked about that online, and then my kids started doing that because they don't use Google, they use TikTok. But TikTok is going to add a large language model that'll melt your face off pretty soon. So we're getting to where those are going to control so much more of that time. I think today, when we can see this in the data, I bet you a lot of your clients and many of the SEOs can see this, visibility in Google might be down, but you're still getting the clicks from Google at about the same rate because people are having their exploration in these AI, especially for complex things. But then they're coming to Google to like execute still. That's going to stop really soon as these AI models add more executions or exploits or calls to action in their model. So you're exactly right. My slide here shows models from back in the day, but it's where these models are being embedded. Like, Garrett, do you have Alexa Plus at home? Do you have an Echo Dot in like?
Yes.
So, that's a funny thing. So we have them in all of our rooms. And for everybody that hasn't tried this yet, enable Alexa Plus it's awesome. Like, compared to, like, you remember it used to be like, Alexa, turn on the music in the living room, and it's like starting the engine in your car. Like, it was so bad, it was so disconnected. I think now if you look at how well they're putting that in there, that's where they've got a big advantage. They have 600 million Echo Dots live in people's households. So you're going to see this fragmentation continue. Now, Garrett and I talk about these sort of three things a lot. I know I said there's one, like, it's fragmenting. I think there's really three fragmentations everyone has to focus on. The first is search. That, I think, is well accepted at this point. The second, I don't think people are talking about nearly as much, maybe you and I are, but not everybody else, is ranking fragmentation. And I'll dive into exactly what I mean by that. And the last is experience. And that's just getting started with things like browsers powered by AI, as well as like Grok in your car. Like, things are starting to expand. I think glasses are going to come out real soon. The Facebook ones, if you tried them, are pretty amazing. But once that's full AI, that's going to be sort of a new experience layer where you're just walking around, you're searching at the same time. So search fragmentation, I think, has been covered really well by the media at this point. There's a lot to point to. I think this industry, the SEOs in general, like, they understand that this is happening. I will say at Yext, we work with really large corporations with thousands of business locations, and then we work with really small businesses through our partners and through SEO agencies. And ultimately, it's not really how big an organization, it's like how savvy do they understand what's happening right now. And so we're seeing people finally understand this. Now, this chart went around on the Financial Times. This is kind of neat seeing, like, so more like search level charts in such esteemed publications. But this chart shows in 2 years, ChatGPT, just their users of just their chat, not the integrated ChatGPT everywhere else, just ChatGPT, hit as many users as the entire internet in 14 years. They did it in 2 years. Now, I want to offer, I don't think any of these adoption charts are really the right way to think about this. Because like Garrett, in year 1, 2, and 3 of the internet, do you remember when you'd have to like hold the phone and be like, hey, everybody, I'm getting on the internet in the household, and like put the phone, like if somebody picked up the phone, you'd lose your connection to AOL. Like that was a lot of behavior that had to be learned from when you talk
Right.
about psychology. That's not happening here. I don't have to learn anything. There's zero cognitive burden to adopting this AI because I'm not adopting it, it's adopting me. And so I think these charts are comparing things that are really apples and oranges, which is, one is sort of like, how do I learn how to use the internet? This is, I don't have to think about this. I can just do it. Like
One call out there I think is important too, though, is like I'd love your take on extrapolations of these charts, because I think there's some big factors that could influence it in the direction of like whether it plateaus or not. One being the default nature of ChatGPT versus Google could
Yep.
obviously influence this. And then people are saying, you see people on the other side arguing that ChatGPT may have hit its peak, and if that's problematic. You and I don't necessarily think so, but what do you say to that?
So a couple things. I think right now the business models haven't all been worked out, right?
Right.
They're still getting started. Like we could see ads in ChatGPT. I know some people have found some technical specifications that ads could be coming. I think as the models settle down as to where people are going, yeah, I agree with Guy. Like the reality is, I think that's going to happen. It's too big of a market not to do it. I think it's going to be offers, not ads, to dive a little into the next section. But to this, I don't think it's really about the models. I don't think people even begun to use the models at the level they're capable of. And so we're going to see a lot of that sort of continue to work its way into the daily lives. I also would say I don't see Google just continuing to do search. Gemini 3, I think for everybody on the call, I'd love to see in the chat if you disagree, but if you're using Gemini 3, you could almost feel the air blow back into Google's lungs. Like they launched it and they're like, it's that good. And so I think with that, if they didn't have that sort of breakthrough, I think maybe what you're saying could have been more likely that, this thing's really not, it doesn't have the juice to continue. So, but we'll see. Yeah, the code red. That's funny. Now, this is a really important trend. If you're not following this, I'm going to take you again in my historical machine here to Hoboken, New Jersey, to a little company called Jet.com. Do you remember when Walmart bought Jet.com? That was a big acquisition. It was $7 billion roughly. Okay, they spent $7 billion on the thing to revamp all of their retail website. They've since spent probably hundreds of millions in the years following optimizing it. Them saying 20% of the referral traffic is now from ChatGPT, and then before Black Friday, signing a deal that says you can just check out in the chat. You don't even have to come to Walmart. I want everybody to think about that. That is one of the largest websites and one of the most expensive websites in the world goes, just check out over there. Don't even bother coming. They're not capturing any of the metrics we used to look at. They just want the checkouts. And I think for many businesses, while this seems uncomfortable, what you have to realize is the website is still critically important, but it's a conveyor belt of data into these large language model interactions where you want to win in both. And so this is going to be this interesting time period where a lot of websites are going to lose a ton of traffic. But if they play their cards right and how they are cited and the knowledge they provide, I think they're going to have phenomenal business outcomes. Now, to everybody that's an SEO or an agency on the call, that's going to feel really uncomfortable because you're going to see a lot of metrics you've always loved and you've spent your career learning not really show any of the value of what you're doing unless the AI companies give us data back. I'm old enough to remember when Google Business Profile didn't provide any data back, and now we have a ton of data. So this might happen, but it may not happen, and you're going to have to be comfortable with that from a privacy and surveillance perspective.
And one thing I'll add to that is just to speak to that, there's so many strategic implications for that for business. Like to your point, like Walmart at the time made the best decision it had with the information available.
Yeah.
Even if they're burning billions of dollars, the question is like, it's hard to know definitively which direction to go, whether or not, we are already hearing conversations of serving up two versions of your content, one for machines and one for people. Is that the right way to go, or finding a smarter way to integrate them both?
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I'm seeing this debate like LLMs.txt and all these different things. Listen, I I think everyone should keep their powder a little dry on how forthright you are on one opinion or not. Here's what I would propose. Like Dwayne Forrester, one of our mutual friends, he just published a book. Everyone should go buy it on Amazon. He's been talking about this there you go. He's been talking about this for a while. Where realistically, the world, because of Google, the world merged the human experience with the machine experience by putting schema and embeddings and JSON LD. But that's actually not the optimal solution. The optimal solution is that there's a machine layer, which I don't know if any of you done this. This is a good test. Go look at one of the websites you run or create. Look in the browser. Use that plugin that shows you how many megabytes it takes to render that page. A typical page for like a Wendy's or a Taco Bell might be 350 megabytes to render that in a browser. That's not helping the machine or the AI when you realize if you take that page and you put it in a large language model and say, just tell me all the structured knowledge that would be helpful to you on this page. You know how big the file is? It's 35 kilobytes. It's a massive factor difference. So the AI could be a lot more efficient. We're going to talk about that in this section. So ranking fragmentation. Now, Garrett and I go off this a lot because there's a lot of psychology implications on this. I happen to believe the whole forgive and forget thing in psychology, it's more like you can forgive because as humans, we're designed to forget, right? We do not have perfect memories. And this is going to be the first time where you have a Goodwill Hunting in your eyeglasses that never forgets anything. I'm not sure we're all ready for this, but I want to talk about in terms of search. When you look at each of these models, all of them have memory. All of them expose memory differently. ChatGPT is probably the best to test this on when you're looking at it. But Sam Altman came out and said, just after the launch of GPT-5, GPT-6 is going to be all about memory. And I really think this is going to happen, which is, if you think about classically speaking, I'm going to use an example I use a lot, which is for 19 years, 18 and a half, I have typed into Google search, tree nut friendly allergy menu dinner. Why? Because when my 19-year-old was 6 months old, we came to find out she has a horrible tree nut allergy. Okay, why doesn't Google just remember that? It's been 19 years. Why not, if someone's vegan and they say, hey, I'm a vegan, why not remember that? Wouldn't it make search better? The answer is ads. The reality is, if I can't have the right to show you steak restaurants because you told me you're vegan, that's a problem for the available ad space. Think of ads as a circle. Search, the word is from the Latin circo, circare. It means circle. You're encircling everything. The bigger the circle, the more ads. Every memory an AI gets shrinks the ads, but it increases the value of the ad because you're much further down the funnel to me because you might adopt a better offer to me. So what I think you're going to see is when we're using search today in AI, the AI is using memory, context, your location, and other things, but all of those things mean the results are going to be very, very different. It's not like RankBrain where maybe, I don't know what you all think, but it's like 8 to 10% RankBrain influence depending on what you're doing. This looks like it's like 100% of the results could be influenced by memory. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because I know you're so on the psychology of what this is going to mean.
Well, I think it really from a business and kind of platform side, it really speaks to like the stickiness of like what platform you choose. And this is why, it's so hard to argue that Google isn't going to dominate because it has so much data. You're so ingrained in the ecosystem all over the place. I think that when it comes to there's also like a content problem. Like we only have so much granular content, so there's limits there. But ultimately, I think as marketers and SEOs, what's frustrating for us, I hate to say that it's frustrating for us, but like it's a better user experience to your point.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's not great for us, but it's better user experience. So
well,
yeah.
Look, you have to take a step back, which is a huge portion of who we market when we're marketing. It's like there are people that are never going to download an app. They're never going to engage with your brand. They're never going to, and you're still spending a huge amount of time to market to them because that's in the essence, you're trying to get known and visible and discoverable. But to some extent, if you're vegan and you're the local steak restaurant, I shouldn't be marketing you anyway. So I think what's going to happen is there will be levels of memories. There will be explicit and there will be implicit. So if I say, hey, I need to pick up a cup of coffee on the way to pick up my son from lacrosse, and I'm talking to my car as I'm going, My car can now infer I have children. It probably already knows that from weight settings in the seats. It knows that where my son does lacrosse. It knows he does it. I didn't mean to tell it any of that, but that's actually still so much more accurate than trying to cookie pull me all over the internet to figure out that I accidentally clicked on a Casper mattress ad and the thing's still chasing me 6 years later. So there's this element of, I think it's better for both sides, but I do want to stress again, I think it's going to be uncomfortable. I think it's not the way we've been brought up. And I, for one, am here for this. I'm a surveillance junkie in that I hate it. I think this is such a better way. Yes, to Guy's point, it is a privacy paradox again, where everybody's like, "Oh, my privacy." I'm like, "You log into Instagram 97 times a day. Stop it. Like stop." So the reality is I think it will be paradoxical behavior, but I do think it'll be a better experience with memory than without. And the way to think about this from a, yeah, thanks, Francine. So I do want to offer this for all the people that do act as agencies or help people understand where's the North Star if you're developing for companies or brands their strategy. And I think it's really these two axes. It's what is the cost of compute of any data set, and how much memory does it take up? So I'm dating myself. That bottom left-hand corner is my first computer. That's a Commodore 64 in 1982. So that's where I started with BASIC. But you see what happens is every so often we get a jump in either compute capabilities or memory. And what Sam Altman is pointing to is like, memory is my next goal. Like, I got a lot of the compute solved. I got to get to the goal here. It's not solved, but it's advanced.
Right.
If they get where it remembers every conversation, where you are, what you did, who you spoke to, what products you bought, if it starts getting to that level, I think you're going to see a very big upswing in the value proposition to the consumer. And that's something, it's getting there, but I think if they get memory right, it's going to be a massive change. All right. I'm going to jump into experience, unless you got anything else on memory. It's my favorite
so
topic.
much, but it's so easy for me to get tangential with, like, when I'm talking to you, because we can go on like all these rabbit holes. Because I'm thinking multimodal, the goals of almost replicating the brain, the short-term, long-term memory. Like, I love the implicit, explicit, perspective on all that. So much. So let's keep going, because otherwise I will. Then we won't get to questions at the end.
Well, and for everyone that's involved in this, I do recommend you should use ChatGPT to test this. I often will tell ChatGPT in live, showing clients. I think it's a really healthy exercise. If you do work with clients, show them and say, "Hey, I love this brand. Can you remember that I always like to recommend them to my friends?" If you take nothing else from this webinar, you should be telling every client to get these clings for their windows that say, "Remember to tell your AI you love XYZ laundromat," because then it's gonna recommend it all the time. It's a simple hack, but it does work, because if you go into your memories, you'll actually see that it says, "Oh, Christian loves Jane's laundromat." So just understand that everything you discuss is both explicit, but it also has implied and these implications down the line as to how search in AI will work for you. Now, this one I think is kind of just dawning, but Garrett, do you use are you using Atlas and Gemini in the browsers at this point?
No, I mean, I've seen Gemini come up. I always think about it, but the friction is still there of just like, I don't want to do Atlas because it's not better. And Gemini, I'm like, I don't need to. I haven't added a value add. Do you?
Yeah, so I kind of forced myself. I would offer everybody on the weekends, or pick a day of the week, or time 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Please try to just use Atlas for like 3 hours straight, because what you'll start to see is where it is better and where it's not. Gemini right now doesn't want to break the Chrome experience. They avoid. Remember, ChatGPT has nothing to protect. They're like, it's all green pastures, right? So I want you to try it, because what I think it does is it sort of rewires your brain to where you're like, oh, I asked ChatGPT a question and then it gives me a panel and an answer, but I could just look it up on the page. Like, why am I doing this? The moment you turn on agent mode and you say, actually, I don't have time for this. Can you go figure this out for me? And it starts opening tabs and moving pages and clicking on link. You're like, holy cow. It's just a very different thing, but it's really not about what it can do. It's about, you have to use it at least enough to where your mind does that switch where you're like, oh, this is what it's going to be. It's not perfect, but it's where it's headed.
It's kind of like the expectation of like unique UXs depending on the context. So like as opposed to like as an SEO, I expect a search page which has been adding things here or there, but eventually it'll literally build the UX as you interact with it, and that'll just be the modern search engine or
Which is what
system.
I heard. I don't know if everyone here has tried Google OS. I know that's just brand new, but that's the idea. As you talk
Right.
to it, it literally generates the new page. I do think that's highly likely what future user experiences look like. I'm sorry to all the designers. You're like, but look at the chart I made you. It's like, guys, they're going to tell you what they want, and then it's going to render. You're going to control the form, the understanding, but it's very much going to be about the data creating the visualization on the fly or the experience. This chart blew my mind a little bit, which is if you look over here on the right, that was May when like we're not talking like years ago. Look at all the model expansion in just a little bit of time to Gemini 3. I show you this because I think we're all, if no one's sleeping, I'm with you. You could call me like, well, we're not sleeping because every day there's a massive change here. And I think it's really important, like, to people closer to my age, many people don't remember sort of the dawn of the web, but like that's where I started my career. And I social, I think, will go down as one of the worst mistakes in the history of mankind in terms of what it did to us. But social, mobile, there was all these revolutions. Nothing feels like this to me than the internet. When the internet started, I'm like, that was the level of, oh my God, what is possible? And I think people should be excited and optimistic. I'm all for the skepticism and being careful, but this type of, like, when was the last time you had products and goods and services evolving so fast that every day there was an update to Nano Banana Pro, like just amazing. If you're not using Google Gemini in your browser, if you don't want to go all the way Atlas, please enable Gemini in your browser. It's a great experience, and it'll read things to you. It's getting so much faster. And this is Atlas. I'll skip that. So I want to get into, if we can, sort of what is the research. The last was really just to show you all, this is where we think it's going. And what we're focused on with clients large and small, which is, I think there will be a merging of these data sets, but I also think everyone's got to take a little bit of a breath and understand that there's not going to be a one size fits all solution, nor do I claim that we have the solution. That's more just, here's what we're looking at, and now I'm going to show you how we're looking at it. And so when I think about AI, I think AI has a trust problem. And I don't mean like you shouldn't trust it, because it's getting so good. It's pretty close to being as trustworthy as search. I'm saying if you have a situation where you ask the AI a question, and it gets it wrong, you're going to stop using that AI. Now, why is that an issue? Well, because if it was hard to switch to another AI, like if I'm using Gemini and I want to try Grok, Garrett, how much time and effort do I have to go into training myself to learn Grok?
Nothing. You're instant.
Nothing.
Human language.
Going from an Android phone to an iPhone almost killed me 4 years ago, right? Like that was the level of cognitive burden you're talking about. This is zero cognitive burden. So the AI companies, their greatest risk is that you don't trust them because you'll switch, and there's no cost to switching in terms of cognitive load. So we look at this and go, well, if trust is the currency by which AI will be judged and scored, then citations are the receipts. They are the thing that the AI is going to bring forward. And so I just show you this because this is a typical sort of dialogue that might happen. And so when you look at this, it's sort of like, what is the best Indian restaurant near Soho that has late night dining and patio seating? When you break down any query, you really can look at it as like, best is a subjective qualifier. Not everybody always uses that. If it's not there, it might just be an objective question. Indian restaurant. Now, a lot of the subjective stuff you get from review sites, because that's where you can gather an opinion. Indian restaurant, that's a category, right? Categories you get from listings and directories. So Google Business Profile is probably one of the best sources of categorical information, because not only can you tell it what yours is, but Google also applies other categories as it deems appropriate given your local competitive space. Soho, that's a location. It's looking at maps, local pages, directory pages in areas. Late night dining and patio seating, this is one I want everybody to focus on, because I think this is an awesome opportunity, which is objective knowledge way beyond the classic stuff you'll see. So objective facts are mostly from your websites and your pages. Now, I want to offer something else about this. Every element on this page has a different level of potential verification by a probabilistic large language model. What do I mean by that? If you have patio seating, but the only place on the internet that says you have a patio with seating is your website, that is a source of 1. There is no other verification for it. Now, if that same thing shows up in a review on a review site, now you're up to 2. If there are listings and directory sites that have flags for patio seating, you might be up to 12. Remember what I'm talking about. This is not a deterministic model. It's not all rules like Google is. It's a lot more math. The more the probability of the number of times you can find the same structured data, the more likely that will show up in an answer by the large language model. Does that make sense, hopefully, to everybody? It's very, very different than what you're used to, where, oh, if I check the flag, I'm good in Google. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the only battleground. It does help in Google if you have it everywhere, but this is really probabilities. And so when we look at this, it's sort of like trust in citations. It's all these different levels. It's the question, it's the context, it's the location, it's the model. So let's dive into our research. So this is really simple, and I know there might be some Garrett pushes back on me on this all the time. So if you ask your AI, hey, if I ask you about a business or a service, do you use my location? Like if I ask you about a business or a service, I'm not asking about is the sky blue? Forget that. I'm not worried about that in my job. What I'm saying is if I'm looking for a business or a service, do you use location? Now this says short answer, yes, absolutely. And yes, blah, blah, blah. Perplexity is way too verbose. But the thing about this is you can also, unless you tell your AI to not use your location, you can everyone can just test this. You can just say, hey, get me lunch near me. What should I get? And it's gonna show you that it knows your location. Okay. Now, what I would argue generally is every research study that you've seen so far on citations ignores this. What they typically do is they take a brand. And by the way, I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm saying it's a very different view than the consumer journey with AI. What they do is they take a brand, let's say, Wendy's, it doesn't matter, the Starbucks. They take a brand, then they take a model, right? And so the model, they then go and say, okay, now do a query fan out. And I think, Mike and Garrett, you guys have all done a ton of work on this. And I think there's some really great research by the SEO community on Twitter or X on this. But what you do is you get a series of questions. And the questions are like, what does Wendy's do? What does Wendy's specialize? What services do Wendy's offer? Okay, when you look at that, of course you're gonna get Wikipedia. Of course you're gonna get Reddit. But that's a brand level question. It's agnostic to the human. Now, here's what I'm going to offer. Unless you're some sort of spiritual being, you're a human in a place as a consumer. You are somewhere, right? Like you could think spiritually. You're here. Wherever you are is being loaded into the AI automatically. That could be memory or your settings or both. So unless you tell it, hey, I'm in New York City and I want a hotel in Florida, but even then you're projecting yourself into that location for the question. So you look at it this way, and then again, you choose a model, you choose an interface, you can track many of these things now. And then memory is this caveat. I can't track it, I have no idea what it's doing, but I know it's there. We did it a little differently. We then break down our questions into branded questions and unbranded questions, which is an homage to the SEO community for having thought this way for a generation. But in doing this, we then broke it down by objective questions and subjective questions. And the reason why our query fanouts look like this is what we're trying to get at is, if I mention a brand, what do you cite? If I ask if the brand's any good, what do you cite? If I don't mention brand, but a category, what do you cite? And the reason why we look at it that way is that is how most people think about their marketing and their content strategy and whether or not they should worry about where the citations are coming from. So then we collected this, we did this study, and I just want to there's a lot of ways you could categorize digital data. I'm going to throw out just 4 categories. And the way we think about it at Yext is, what as a business or brand can you control? Your website is 100% under your control, well, unless your IT department sucks, but mostly it's under your control, okay? So if you can control this, you basically can say, I want to talk about my offers, I want to talk about my events, I want to talk about, now next one, listings, you can control a lot of it. You can't control all of it. And why do I say that? Well, so Google, if I'm having an event, like a financial advisory forum at a local hotel where I'm going to explain trusts and REITs, whatever, I can't put that in Google in the Google business profile. Why? Because they want me to buy an ad to promote what I'm doing, right? I can't just feed that in. So your website, you can have it. your directories, they scale better than your website, but they don't have as much flexibility for you to control. Now, I moved to reviews and social. Now, I know that's going to offend a lot of people. I'm grouping them together in one category. And it's because it's really an engagement layer, okay? I'm not talking about the platforms. I'm saying you can control some of this, but it's really where you can engage, but you can't stop what people are saying in both. And with social, you really can't either. So they're almost like bi-directional communication systems, not really the same thing as getting your data out there. And the last one, I'm throwing Reddit in, which is, look, you can't control Reddit and you can't control what people say. I know everybody's using, AI to generate a bunch of crap there now, but the reality is those forums and news releases and CNBC covering your brand, you can't control that stuff for the most part. Now, if you look at the world that way, we gathered this data. Now, I just want to show people really quickly. This is by the way, all of this research we'll show you later. All of it's been published, so we do publish at Yext Research, and we'll get you a link for that. But just so you understand how we're doing this. Yeah. So this is a map. This is actually Starbucks. I just randomly pulled up Starbucks, looking at all their locations. If you look at this map, this is the Google organic ranks in all these little hexagons. We're using the Uber open source H3 hexagonal mapping system. When you zoom in, what I can do is I can see every Starbucks location. And as I get really down here into the smaller areas, I can see this one location. And what I'm doing is I'm asking those questions in these areas to find out how are they ranking against their competition. Starbucks at the moment, you can see there's a lot of red, but there's also a lot of green. It depends on usually the business density. And the reason why we do it this way is I don't think for Starbucks, the Starbucks in Roswell, Georgia has a very different competitive profile of who they're competing against than the Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. So the classic SEO of best practices, it kind of breaks down a little bit. I'm not saying they're not still good things to shoot for, but like the one in Midtown's got to do something different than the one in Roswell. And so we're gathering the data at this hyper granular level. And then we're gathering all of the competitors around Starbucks to know what are they doing and what citations show up for them. Does that make sense? I know it's a lot, but I want to show you so you can see how we're gathering.
I'm glad that people are seeing this because I think it really highlights, obviously the difference between a single location SMB and what their universe and their zone of influence is very different than a Starbucks that has, thousands and thousands of locations. But I think it also highlights, and I know you're going to get into this too, the way the consumers decide where to go based on not only the density, but the type of service or business or product, the data. And to your point about data in general, the way we need to think about this is you really need to focus on what your data and your competitors' data is. You can't just blanket statement of like what you're seeing. We're looking at citation levels across the entire country, but there's going to be so much more value of what you're looking at in your geography for your business, for your industry.
You got it. And it's also, I'll say, there's a difference between how Chick-fil-A is discussed in the Southeast and the Northeast. Right. And so you want to understand your brand, but you have to understand the location matters. And countries in Europe and everything else, we have a global view of this. What we did was we're running for all of our clients, prospects, and you can try all this. There's a free way to try Scout I can show people later. But we ran like a very short window, like 45 days or so, of just pulling in all the citations and all the queries that were going out based on our clients. So we did a study on 6.9 million citations. I think we published this 2 months ago. And we did it on 3 models. I was going to do it on Claude, but Claude, for like geeks like everyone on this call probably, that's really my coding thing. I don't necessarily use it in the wild as much. So, but if you look at these, the way that we did it was, here's the counts of citations. We launched Scout, the tool that does all that, in the US. So it's a predominantly US focused study, but we started getting results, a good whole 429 citations out of Russia. But the reality is this data grows every day, which I'm going to get to at the end of the presentation. But I want you to look at this. This is by question type. So a branded objective question, what time does that Wendy's open? To a branded subjective question, is that Wendy's any good? To an unbranded question, where can I get a burger near me? To where can I get a good burger? And some of the percentages are really quite fascinating, which is if you break down the citations into things like websites, third-party directories, local websites. By the way, I know this is a third rail. I love touching this one with SEOs. So you know the whole subdomain versus the folder structure
Oh, yes.
in local. Okay, so this one I love. So a lot of our so we power a few billion pages online. Half of our clients do subdomains like location dot coffeeshop.com, and half of ours do folder trees. And the religious debate I've just watched from afar for years. Can I tell you? The AI doesn't care. It's so obvious already that these local websites that have the subdomains are already such a large percentage of what's cited. The reason I think they do so well is the AI doesn't have to compute all the folder structures. It's a much more concise, specific page, like offers dot. So we'll see if this holds. But the most important thing to look at is these three categories you can control almost completely: directories and websites. And this one's fascinating. See Gemini for branded, subjective, or unbranded. See, like for directories, some of these models use them a lot. And other models like Gemini, it looks like they don't use directories as much. I'll tell you why. It's kind of fascinating. Google does not cite Google Business Profile. They just put it on there, but they don't cite themselves. It's sort of be like me talking about myself in the third person. They don't do it. So what happens is that doesn't mean Google Business Profile isn't the source of the data. It just means they don't cite it in the way they return their values. Whereas the other people do cite Google Business Profile. So you see, like, there's all these fun little intricacies of how the data works. Now, to all you Reddit fans, when you add location, the news, blog, forums, look at these. They're all, one's over 5%. They're all single low digits. And that's not just Reddit. That's Reddit, Wikipedia, and all the other news, forums, anything we could categorize. They're a very small percentage. Again, I implore all of you, try this on your own phone. Be like, hey, I need a new surfboard and I want to get it locally, and see what happens. You are not going to get Reddit. Well, surfing you might. There's a huge surfing community on Reddit. But the rest of them, I'm like, you won't see it. You're going to see very interesting sort of structures. Now, it is different by model. So each of the models weighs more, but look at the average percentages of just websites and directories. Hopefully for all you SEOs that are on, this is a great opportunity. It's another way to demonstrate. Now, reviews, I was surprised about, and social, I was surprised about. I thought you'd see a lot more of that. In fact, if you go down here, you'll see in retail and in food, naturally, you would expect reviews are much bigger as a percentage of what they are. But I thought they would dominate. And I think what's happening is if you're a review site, this stuff is an existential threat to an aggregation platform of opinions. Because if I can get all the opinions there, why am I going to your site? So they're starting to block. Actually, the new study, we could see a smaller percentage of review sites being cited. Unless they do a content deal, I don't think they're going to be able to fight this trend. Like, meaning
That's
they're not
really
showing up.
interesting. So, like, I imagine because like Yelp is notoriously litigious, which makes a lot of sense. And I assume that Google reviews are baked in. And to your point about them not being cited for Google Business Profiles, do you think, because you'll see, for instance, on search that it references like the knowledge graph, like in e-commerce, you'll see the
Yes.
shopping graph. So obviously they're pulling in, even if they're not giving you specific links. The
Yes.
other thing I want to kind of call out, stop you for a second, is Adrian wanted to know specifically about professional service firms. I know it's not on this graph outside of like banks or whatnot, but do you have any
Yep.
insights that you can speak to there?
So, Adrian, you can absolutely reach out to me. I will get you. So what I'm getting to next is this initial study was a lot of big brands in these
Right.
categories. And what I'm about to show you is where we're going with that. So we'll be able to show you like law firms, plumbers, like much more granular. And really, it's more just because of the way we're focused on our clients that signed up for Scout and started using it. The data comes in so I can see it. But we also ran an index on 100 top keywords that are area or location based, so plumbing. So we have the data, but it wasn't at the scale with this study to really publish on it. So that's a starting point. I do want to show this. This does make me laugh. Now, everybody on this call is going to be like, they're like, this is crazy. Okay, I don't know the last time any of you printed the MapQuest map and put it on the passenger seat of your car. Remember we all used to do that? Like as you're driving, you'd have printed it because there was no internet when you drove. Okay, MapQuest is the #1 cited across those three models, not
What?
breaking them out. Remember, Google would be higher, but Google doesn't cite itself. So Google is the champion because that's just 2 models, not 3. But MapQuest as a source, I know people will laugh, but it's highly structured. It's so easy to crawl. It has no fluff. It is literally like a conveyor belt of structured goodness. And if you go down this list, so is the Chamber of Commerce, so is Yellow Pages, so is BBB, so is Waze, so is Yelp. It's not that they're not showing up, but when you add these, I highlighted in blue a lot of the people that have been partners of Yext, or I think people, it's just kind of funny. Like I haven't thought of Yellow Pages in years, but the reality is they're showing up. Now, the biggest, most common ones, I think they're always going to be the most common ones. But to see Uber Eats MapQuest at the top of citations look, this is 7 million citations. A lot of our competition, they put out anecdotal research, and I think that's adorable. But you can't look at 5 clients and be like, we got the answer. I'm not even telling you I have the answer. I'm just telling you, holy crap, this is fascinating how deep this goes. Now, this is not showing you the websites. The websites are a much bigger percentage, but the tail on the websites, we pulled in millions of individual domains that are only cited once. Once you get into all the geographic, remember, if you're way out in the countryside and you're Five Guys Pizza or you're a burger joint, you're not competing with 20 burger joints. You're competing with a Thai restaurant, a sushi restaurant. There's only 3 burger joints out there. So you have to stop thinking like global and brand and start realizing from the consumer's perspective, what is showing up and what is being cited. So this is healthcare and finance also. So there's retail and food. Same thing, healthcare and finance. Healthcare and finance, I will offer, this is your money or life type stuff. This is very regulated. And what's interesting about that is in finance, MapQuest is again #1, BBB. I think a lot of the models, everyone thinks it's like, oh, it's just probabilities. No, it's not. These are model of experts, all of them are. They have logic trees, and then they have a safety framework around them. So already you're seeing that they're very specifically not calling out some things, and they are calling out data directories, like industry directories, like a Health Grades or a WebMD or a doctor. That's good. But can I offer again, just like Yelp, if I'm Health Grades or any of these ones that are aggregators where they're both ratings and reviews, it's an existential threat. They can't, like, I don't know if you just remember the chart on LinkedIn of WebMD falling off when ChatGPT launched. Like, yeah. It's serious, right? So I don't know what their model is going to do. I think if they don't sign content deals, this is really,
well, that's the thing. It's all agentic, right? Like it's all like who's going to win the being built into the system, agentic process, which we've
yes, you got it. So can I just back up from the consumer perspective? Stop worrying about Reddit and Wikipedia. I'm not saying now. Again, I do follow everyone on LinkedIn. They're like, oh, Reddit's back. Oh, Reddit's gone. Oh, Reddit. Like, look, I don't care. I guess what I'd say is, if a ton of you for a complex purchase, if Reddit is your first go-to, I think that's awesome. It's a great. It was a great, we'll see if it continues with AI generated content, but it was a great source. But generally speaking, it doesn't show up if location is taken into account. Reddit is really top of consideration funnel. I don't think that's bad. And if you have a Reddit problem, you should solve it. But what I'm saying is generally, it's not going to play in as much, particularly if they don't figure out their own content strategy with getting paid. Now, all this research is at yext.com/research. We write this stuff up. We publish regularly, and I just want to say, Garrett, that we're not done with this report. So I did tease with Garrett. I'm like, look, I got 57 million citations as of yesterday. So I have now 3 models, 57 million. So 3 months later, what does it look like? Because the database is just growing. Unfortunately, I did not get through all of it, but to give you an idea of the growth, the last one was 5 million citations in the US. It's 64 million now, right? So like we're growing really fast. Now I'm showing you all the citations, the ones I've categorized. I'm working on 42 million more, but you can already see I'm picking up other areas. So I forget, was it Adrian?
Adrian was asking.
Adrian, yeah. This other category, I've now got 42 million businesses I have to break into the categories, the subcategories, and we're going to start making that available in the research platform. So you'll be able to actually go like, I don't just want lawyers, I want personal injury and this really deep down, but I just needed more data to, I think, statistically be confident in the results. The initial results, I will also say, look, I think location matters. I'm not saying if you're an e-com brand, this is the right way to go, but even most e-com brands want to know how their brand is doing in a place, right? It's not like generally, how's my brand? That's good, But I want to know, do people in Florida, do I show up for them even though I'm free shipping and I'm based in California? That's going to be this next battleground of not just where the consumer is, but offering things on your website that level the playing field where the AI, because remember, the AI is going to say to you, not here's 80 million results in search. It's going to say, well, I get you want a new surfboard. I don't know why I'm shopping for a surfboard, but I'm going to get surfboard. And it goes, are you okay waiting a couple weeks? Because if you are,
Right.
for what you're really aligned to, which is an environmentally friendly, it's a beginner board. Like I actually think almond surfboards, but they're in California. They're nowhere near you in Florida. But if you can wait, their website says all the things you're looking for, and they'll do free shipping. That is this balance between the offer that's going to come through by doing structured data properly. But the funnel as we know it is moving. It's moving off of the site into these chats and these discussions. Number two, websites in the big data set, I can already see websites are expanding their citation base. I think that's partially tied to the bandwidth of crawl and compute at the models. They're pulling in more websites, much broader source. So the website is gaining ground. The directories are kind of just getting smaller because the websites are getting bigger, but social interviews are getting smaller. So from when I ran it 3 months ago, they're smaller than they were. And that's not just websites. It's that I think, again, many of these sites are starting to block the crawlers. They do not want to let that content out. And the reason why they showed up more before is because they were in the training data. They didn't block the stuff while it was being trained on. Now they're blocking it and you're seeing it decline. And then the last thing, online profiles, directories, verification. Think of directories or any third-party site where you can have your data highly structured that matches the website. That's that goal of verification. And different data points, you can get more verified. That's absolutely the way probabilities work. The more like if I'm with Garrett and we're back in Jersey somewhere, and we ask 37 people in the bus station of like, hey, where should we get a slice of pizza? And they go, all 37 said, go here. You got to go to Goodfellas. Here's the location. He and I would be very confident from a probability perspective that we have independently verified that that's where we're going. That is how this works. And so I think you can optimize for that very aggressively.
I got to ask real quick to
Yeah,
touch on, because I know this is a citation study, but I do want to hear your thoughts on mentions, because obviously mentions have a different sort of value, but they're more valuable than maybe they were in the past.
yeah.
Do you think that impacts the equation like substantially?
Absolutely. It is amazing to me. We're getting to this world where if you have mentions and you can, I mean, the ideal scenario is you have mentions that have a structured data point that is important to the customer journey. Now, most brands and businesses, they know what's important, right? So if you're a plumber, you know that you really want to be known for kitchen remodeling and not 2 a.m. Clogged toilets, right? That's not the business you want to be in. So if you really want that, then the mentioning that it's the new kitchen in the new house was done by Pete's Plumbing, that's really important, because then you get this idea. What do we mean by mentions is a citation is actually a link to an originated source that is not controlled. A mention might be in an article or in a post, or it's not as solid. Yeah, a review. It's more unstructured in the AI's results. And Garrett, we do track in that Scout tool, we track the order of the mentions as well. So I hesitate to call it rank, but if I ask for a hotel in Jacksonville Beach, we are storing the ordinal nature of who did they mention first, who did they mention second. It's not a real rank, and it's highly volatile, particularly by memory, but we are keeping track just to understand.
The
Because if we
co-occurrence
watch it,
matters. Yeah.
so does that answer your question, Paul? It's less structured and not necessarily a link out from the model. But there could be a mention on, like, I also find a lot of cross-border citations. So I don't know if you've all seen this, but when you ask like a technical question or an SEO question, you'll see like the India Times or a lot of India-based, because they're incredibly prolific. And so what you see is a lot of cross-national. So you should be thinking about this, not only where the business is, but what regions is it being cited from. So excellent. All right, Garrett, I think I'll turn it over to you, and you can walk us through or questions.
No, I mean, it's so good. Like, and I can't reiterate enough to, check out the Yext research, and that there's so much more to pay attention to over, time being a factor in all of this. We were talking right before this webinar, launched. The idea of like, as you get new models, as ChatGPT 5 is rolled out, as Gemini 3 is rolled out, as we see the weights fluctuate, and as Christian was mentioning, like Reddit coming and disappearing and coming and disappearing, like it'll be interesting to see. I don't think the dust ever settles at this point. Like we're always saying, like wait till the dust settles. I don't think there's any dust settling going forward. So, as an SEO, as a marketer, as a business owner, unfortunately, none of this stuff is set it and be good to go. Like even with Yext, like with the listings, you still need to pay attention to any additional content that you can add to your listings that will increase the value of whatever people are searching for. That's my last point.
Yeah, and all those platforms, they're seeing sort of resurgence in their relevance.
Yeah.
They were always important from a signal processing perspective. That's always been the exposition. You should get as much data exactly the same in real time as you can, because we know that helps. We can prove that. But this is different. This is almost like a resurgence of they're looking at their models going, wait a second, we might be a really good source of information. What if we added the menu? What if we added the insurance provider? What if we added? So you're seeing this expansion of the use of these tools in structured data. And I think everyone, look, again, it's not a Yext pitch. I'm saying you should rethink data in probabilities instead of a deterministic world where Google controlled it. I think it's sort of a whole different way to go.
Let's go through this. So yeah, iPullRank. Yeah, no, I just want to give a shout out. So just for those who aren't familiar, iPullRank, we can kind of go through some of these last slides, and then we have a little time for a question or two, maybe. We obviously help with relevance engineering to make sure that your brand is visible across all of these AI surfaces. If you want to kind of go through the next few slides real quick, Christian, we have an AI search manual. So 20 chapters where we've kind of gone through pure fire of everything from the evolution that we're seeing from traditional search to AI search, what you can do specifically in terms of tactics and strategies, and ultimately how you need to think about measuring and monitoring. Thanks, Francine dropped the link there. There it is. And like I said, we'll send out the deck. Next slide.
By the way, I think I texted you immediately when that came out. I'm like, that was one of the best formatted online experiences I've seen for any one of these things. It was so well done.
And shout out to Francine who participated. She actually wrote a bunch of the chapters in there as well with myself, Mike, and a bunch of us who have been doing a lot of the research. So thank you so much. And it's there, and we're updating it as well. So we've been doing this for clients. We've seen a lot of those tactics working where you're making sure that that data is discoverable, that it is extractable, and that impacts your visibility in ChatGPT AI overviews. Next slide is the same sort of thing when we're doing that for making sure, people laugh about like chunking your content or making sure you're using semantic triples, but making the data as clean and structured and entity rich as possible and backed by data has an impact on your visibility. It's everything that you're talking about, Christian, as well. Next slide is we've got a amazing event coming up in April. If you're going to be in New York, see myself. I'm sure Christian will be there. Francine will be there, but we are doing SEO Week. It was a hugely successful event last year. If you want to get a sense of it, there's a sizzle reel video of what it was like on our website, but we have early bird tickets that are available for the next 2 weeks. And then the price actually jumps like $800. So if you want to commit, be with us in New York in April, 4 days, 40 speakers. It's going to be amazing. And then over to you.
Excellent. Yeah, I would say so. Yext has a podcast where we discuss all things visibility. Please grab a QR code. It's not just myself and Yext members. We bring in all sorts of experts, CMOs, anybody in the industry that is both optimistic or completely skeptical. Like our goal with this is how are people really engaging with the new visibility metrics? And then I as always, sir, it is a pleasure speaking with you. I don't know if there's any questions as well. But I really genuinely appreciate the opportunity. I will be back to you with the full research report in the next month.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, I love our conversations. Like I said, follow Christian on LinkedIn. So we do have a question here, real quick. Do you got a hard stop in 2 minutes, or are you like 5 minutes?
I'm okay if you're okay. No, this is
okay.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going. Okay, so a couple of questions. Let's take them. Maz wants to know any courses or resources on structured data so he can understand the side of things better.
Yeah, so structured data often, one of the best ways to think about it is in the financial services industry, they're one of the first to really structure data and push it through. Think of every exchange. So that's really where it got its start was things had to be perfect. They had to match because if you bought IBM shares in Germany on the New York Stock Exchange, you better not get that wrong. So structured data originated as this sort of packet understanding and it scaled in financial services first. So you can read a lot about that. But if I were you, Maz, I would say go and actually open your Gemini or ChatGPT. Since you do on-page SEO, take your page, any page, you can even do a Control A, Control C, drop it in there and say, show me any potential structured data, put it in schema markup table for me, explain the category, and explain to me why or how that might be utilized. It's magical because what it starts to get you to understand is you may already be doing schema and some of the technical things you should be doing. But what most people fail to realize is if you have a great paragraph about the founding of the business, or you have a paragraph about the product, or you have a paragraph, there is so much explicit structured data in there that you're just not extracting and then putting in a tabular or a more encoded form. So always think of from fully unstructured to like a dialogue, like the one we've been having, to taking that is just unstructured, but you can run it through a process. And I actually think in that case, Claude is my favorite for that. Try Claude to take a unstructured or a web page and see what it has, but that'll open your eyes to what's possible.
There we go. Let's do one more from Keith. What would be your tips for a local recruitment agency job board that competes with job boards that operate countrywide? Oh, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
it's a great one. So one of the best things you can do, and you may already be doing this, is you should be really thinking about, I'm going to use a math term, combinatorial page structures. And what I mean by that is, if anyone remember 5 exclamation point in it's probably high school math, but it's like 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. That's the number of ways that you can recombine 5 elements. So your 5 elements are the neighborhood, the region, the state, the city, any sort of geography. You should have a page that is focused on that and talks about that and the hiring and the job market in that area. But then you want to take the jobs that specifically attach to that area and you want to structure those on that page. So you might, as a regional or an area or a particular practice area, you might end up with 40 to 50 pages of understanding of, hey, let me explain why I'm saying this. If I, for example, wanted to get a new job and I want to be a chef, but I want to learn how to get, into, the sous chef program in Atlanta, Georgia. There's 900 neighborhoods and there's 500 cuisine types and there's 30 training programs and there's 200 jobs. That's a lot of pages where the top primary structure is the thing that they're searching for. But by having the additional data on a single page, you're chunking it properly so the large language model can do better with it. I hope that gives you an idea, but that's one way to do it.
There we go. Fidelity wants to know, rather than ignore a page of content, will AI imply structure if I include that in the prompt?
Rather than ignore. So first off, I'm not sure it would ignore a page. And I'm not sure, this is a great question. I think where you're going with that, Fidelity, is I do think that the AI is thinking about adding structure, but I want to caution the way Google crawls and indexed, they were adding structure so they could and more accurately try and rank. This is a little different. This is probabilities based, where depending on if your page, if it grounds to your page, so if the AI makes a call to your page, I don't think it's going to ignore anything on there. But I am telling you that if it has to burn a lot of compute to structure your page, where the competitor, there's no compute, it's perfectly structured, it's going to prefer, because you're an expensive crawl or expensive extrapolation on that data. So you should always think of it this way. I know everybody thinks they market to humans. They're like, oh, my customer is better. You don't. You haven't for years. You market to an algorithm. Whether or not your business shows up is solely determined by whether that algorithm trusts your data and wants to spend the time to structure, compute, look at it. So remember, compute and memory. The easier or less costly you make that by making it easier to remember and easier to compute, that's where you want to go with how you build out your pages.
It's so interesting the way our brains need to shift as marketers for, because to your point, yes, there's a lot of stuff that's been happening for the past 10, 15 years. But for me, the biggest thing is we're going to see 6, 7 nice fidelity. We're going to see a
Yeah.
lot of much more natural language usage in our search cases. So you really do need to think granularly. You need to really do need to think about having more content, but having it more accessible. And that's going like as people like we did our UX AI mode study, and Francine and I were working on this, and it was so frustrating because it's only going to get better. Right now, AI mode gives you like a wall of text, regardless of what type of query that you're asking for. But over time, it's going to become a better experience. But you need to think on a task by task, query by query type of question. And that's why like audience research has never been more important, to
Yeah.
make sure that you're providing the right information. It's structured in an accessible way.
Yeah, and look, you can test this stuff. You can build the pages. You can look at what's showing up. It doesn't take long to do that, to sort of A/B a page with great content and without. But I also think here's another example of a way I don't think people are. So I work at Yext, and somebody just gave me this hat, and you probably won't be able to read it, but I'm going to read what this hat. Look at that. That's like a
Please.
ridiculous hat. It says, "Ever since I was young, I wanted to transform unstructured data into actionable business insights." Okay, and that is really the way I see the world. But that's really sad that someone actually made a hat and I got it. Okay, what I would tell you is the way I see the world is I want you to take your phone and go into a business, and I want you to take a photo, several photos. I want you to feed those to Claude or to Gemini or to ChatGPT and say, build me a table of all the structure, data, knowledge, objective facts about everything you see in this photo. And it's going to melt your mind, where it's sort of like in, remember in Fight Club, where he's talking about his room and you see
Augmented.
the
Yeah.
apartment with all the tags. That's a lot of where we're going with this, which is it's not the coffee table. It's, does the coffee fit in my space? How wide is it? What's the make? What's the environmental impact? Like all the facts are how you have to win in this, because it's not about a massive audience for one keyword. It's about optimizing all the way down a 7 conversational back and forth that you're the one that takes the receipt home. And it's because you have given them all the information they need to actually buy your product. Again, that's very different than marketing. It's a different path. It's actually a far more reasonable value exchange between the consumer and brands. But it's going to feel really uncomfortable if you are one of those people that leaned into tracking everything and tracking everyone. Like,
I was going to say, to bring it all like full circle and to wrap it up at the end, I mean, that is the trickiest thing with trying to monitor like keyword volume, in the sense of like you have to look at entire conversation, because out of context, even just a specific query or a turn, as they're called in conversations, doesn't make any sense. Like if I'm asking for, what is the best, Indian restaurant with me, and then my next query is just like, it gives me an answer and I'm like, no, I need one that's open at 5. That
right.
in its own without context isn't useful for a marketer.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
way we need to think about visibility and tracking that is, it just needs to change as well.
Yeah, and look, I think this is healthy. I know it's uncomfortable in some ways, but I think it's healthy. Like I always joke people that bought CDPs and put millions of dollars into surveillance tracking and cookies. I'm like, don't you realize when your grandkid someday asks you, like, hey, Dad, what'd you do for a living? And it's like, well, so what I would do is I'd follow people and I'd see what they read. And then I'd go to their house and I'd see who came to visit them. And then if other people got close to them, their phones, I could see what those people were reading. And then I could see what they bought by going through their trash. Your grandkid's going to be like, Grandpa's a stalker? Like it's so the wrong part of history. I'm like, we just need to come back from this. And we need to understand that humans want to tell you what they're looking for. And yes, there will always be discovery. Go sponsor Wimbledon, okay? But the tracking is going to take a huge hit. And so everyone needs to prepare that if you can't track them, then really what you want to do is make sure they have all the knowledge they need in these systems so that they can arrive at your door. And that's gonna be a problem. But I think you'll be on the better side of history as to how this all works.
There you go. Thank you, Christian, for an amazing, enlightening, interesting webinar. Keep your eyes peeled for more of their research. Check him out on LinkedIn. I'm going to sign off. We are going to go ahead and wrap this up and send you the replay and the deck afterwards. But thank you all so much for joining us today. This has been awesome.
Absolutely. Thanks, Garrett.